Threatening to suspend your claim or even close it has been called legal nonsense by an upper tribunal judge, talking specifically about the Department of Work and Pensions and the bank statement saga. So if you are someone who is worried about this, if you are getting anxious, if you've been asked for 4 months of statements, bank statements or more, or if you have been threatened, like I see in the comments, so many of you are being threatened, then you're going to want to watch this video. Now, in this video, I am going to be pointing out quite a lot of the mistakes that I see lots of you making. I'm going to also be giving you a clear step-by-step plan on what to do, what to ask and who to confirm, what to upload, how to ask for an extension and why you might want to do that, and how to protect yourself with proof. And let's get straight into it. Now, I get it. When people get these messages, they go into massive burnout, overdrive, anxiety, panic, and all the rest of it. But what happens when you do that is you go into a direct emotional state and then you start oversharing, giving out too much information, and basically saying too much about yourself. And that doesn't mean that you've got anything to hide. It just means that lots of these systems at the Department of Work and Pensions, particularly with bank statements, are being managed with AI. And the more information you give these systems, along with the people behind the desk, the more issues you are very likely to have. Take that from somebody that used to work there, has done claim reviews, has even done certain projects for the fraud team. So I know what I'm talking about. Now, before we get into the nitty gritty, when people get into an emotional state, they start to make mistakes as well. They start uploading the wrong bank statements, uploading the wrong dates, oversharing, as I've already stated. That is a big issue for lots of people. And basically missing the direct message trail, which could be, or perhaps is for some of you, your evidence line should you want to take it to court, or you be taken to court for not producing the evidence. As always, I just have to put that disclaimer out there. This is not legal advice. But what is clear more than legal advice, it is legal judgments, are some of the quotes in interesting claims regarding the closure of claims because people haven't submitted evidence, as stated by the Upper Tribunal Judge Wright. And these are some of his direct quotes. So let's just have a little look at two of them in particular before we go further down this rabbit hole of what you guys need to stop doing when it comes to being asked for your bank statements. So first of all, he clearly states in his judgment, and I'm going to leave the link down below for that, that suspending a claim and closing the claim was described as utter legal nonsense. That was in his summing up when dealing with the Department of Work and Pensions. And the legal route for that, or the legal reason for that, is this. And I've said this to you time and time and time again. Once universal credit is awarded, the original claim stops subsisting. That is a legal term to describe the positioning of where the claim is at in regards to government policy, which are obviously, the rules and the acts of law. The judgment quotes Section 8, Paragraph 2, that the Social Security Act of 1998 to explain that after a claim is decided, it is treated as continuing. Now, this is a very relevant quote because lots of you are putting in the comments little copied and pastes like messages that you've been getting from work coaches citing the Social Security Act, okay? And I know lots of people are fearful, like, oh my God, I must be wrong because they've copied and pasted this. Please, and I mean no disrespect to any civil servant or anybody that works at the job centre, but I have worked alongside these people. I have corrected many, many mistakes on claims. I've had to write training for work coaches and team leaders. And all I'm going to say is that quite often the work coach, quite frankly, is not the brightest button in the box. They don't understand quite often the very acts to which they refer to. That's why they are often just blanketly copying and pasting a few pieces of an act or something that they may have been sent out or seen on a complaint letter on another claim. The fact is, and this is a fact, the Upper Tribunal have made this ruling that not providing evidence for a universal credit claim does not mean that the Department of Work and Pensions can close down your claim. And when they do, as they did with this particular claimant, or I should say, if they do, because it's not necessarily going to happen to everybody, some of you claimants need to take heed of this next quote. Now, this is a quote from the same judge, which he gives as an advisory note to lower tribunals. And he clearly states that the things that DWP state, particularly in their defence, should not be taken at face value. That is a direct quote. So he's basically saying to lower tribunals, just because they're DWP and they're here in the court, it doesn't mean that we have to, like, they automatically are going to believe that everything they say is right and that the tribunal must follow that, because they make errors, and quite often they make a lot of errors. And this is one of the cases that shows you that it, like the evidence in particular, which has been a big issue for lots of people, is not a reason to close a claim. Now, that doesn't mean you must ignore requests. That doesn't mean that you should not or will not comply, of course, and you must comply. You must always comply. You must always cooperate, because failing to cooperate when requests are made can be seen as being unlawful. And that is why I created that toolkit there, which has got the whole array of letters and templates and a guide that goes further into the different letters you need to write, why you need to write them, how you write them, and all sorts of other things as well. Now, the same judge has said, for the same type of situation, so failure, or what DWP considered failure to provide evidence was reason to close a universal credit claim. This is what the judge says. The award decision, so that's giving the award of universal credit, is final unless lawfully revised superseded things take place. And there is a whole section there. Entitlement can't be removed just because somebody fails to verify identity. Sometimes these bank statements are being used as identity, not as capital checks. There must be a proper legal basis and evidence for revision. And a proper legal basis also relates to the types of data that you guys are being asked for. Now, I'm going to start going into the other parts now a little bit more. So now I'm going to go into the next parts, but I wanted to provide those quotes for you so you realise that these are very serious statements made by a judge, an upper tribunal judge, who has corrected the Department of Work and Pensions. So this is not nonsense. This is real. This has happened. It is relatively new, and it is really setting the precedents for lots of you that are struggling with this situation. But you must write the letters, and you must use the letters, and you must follow a process if you want to challenge it. So that is the first place where we're going to start. Follow the process. So that isn't phoning up universal credit, shouting down the phone. That is not going into the job centre or wherever you are being rude and because you're annoyed. And I understand. I know how it can be very threatening and very frustrating if you feel that your income is going to be taken away from you or suspended. I do understand. But trust me, it is not going to help you solve anything or find the resolution that you want. That's why I wrote the different letters for you all to use. You just put your name in, you put your relevant personal information in there, and you send it. Now, one of the first letters that is in the data toolkit relates to requesting specifically what type of data is being requested and the time period, because universal credit is allocated, assessed for, and paid every single month. Every single month, your assessment, not of entitlement, your assessment of how much money you're going to be paid is assessed every single month based on the information that they have, or the information that you have given them from a change of circumstances, or I should say, a bank statement. If you are being asked for 4 months of bank statements, 6 months of bank statements, some people have said 10 years of bank statements, that would be 10 years of qualifying universal credit assessment periods. Now, here's the part lots of, I think, team managers in particular at the job centre are missing when we take into account all of the things the Upper Tribunal is saying and data protection law. Once universal credit has been awarded, it doesn't just vanish because you haven't uploaded the bank statements. So the first letter in the data toolkit will be requesting specifically what dates, what assessment periods. Now, if you've been threatened with claim suspension or you've been threatened with claim closure, you then have another letter in the data toolkit where you're asking for the specific decision making process and the rules and policies that govern it as to how they've come to this decision. And the reason why you want to do this in writing with a letter is so that they reply to you in writing, because you need that for evidence. If it's on the phone, you have no evidence. Because if DWP want to change an award or create an invoice saying that you've had an overpayment, therefore you've got to pay them back money, and I've seen invoices to the sum of £86,000 and beyond, just because DWP thought that someone hadn't made a change of circumstances and in actual fact they had. DWP need to provide evidence of the lawful basis which they rely upon to make the decisions that have led to claim suspension or claim closure. And I have been involved in lots of claim suspensions and claim closures, obviously not for this. It was to do with other things, not for this. And it is not a process that's done lightly. It's not something where, a button is clicked and that's it. There is a whole, process that needs to be followed. It needs to be signed off by a number of different people as well. It's not just one person. One person alone cannot close a claim. So putting these things in writing is literally making them, in a sense, double check exactly what they're saying and actioning. And hopefully, if there has been a problem at that point, it would have been corrected. Or should I say, it gives them the opportunity to correct the error before it comes into, something more serious, more of a crisis, even potentially a lawsuit. Now, I did say earlier about requesting extensions. There may be a number of different reasons if you're being asked for bank statements that you would want an extension. One of the reasons might be that you don't have any bank statements and you need to go and get them or request them, and the bank might want to take a few weeks perhaps to send them to you. Normally you can access these things online. Maybe it's an account that you've closed and you're having to go through that process. Maybe you're old school and you don't have anything online and you have to go to your bank. Maybe you have health conditions and you have disabilities and you're finding this all a lot to process, or you physically cannot go to the bank. So there are lots of different reasons that you can request an extension. Now, if it's for a long-term health condition, a chronic illness or a disability, you can request for an extension under the Equality Act of 2010, and that's called a reasonable adjustment. And again, there are letters in the toolkit where you can request that. If you don't have a health condition, but you're just feeling very overwhelmed and you need more time to get it together and get them the information that they require, then you can simply say, very simply, again, in a letter, I'm obviously complying, but I do need more time. Please, can you confirm that you are not going to close my claim or suspend my payments, because I am gathering the information and will be providing the data I think is relevant in response to your request by, and then put your date in your timeline. Now, data protection principles state that category A data, and this is category A data because it's financial data, isn't relevant. It's not relevant for you to show absolutely everything. You can redact your bank statements. You do need to show your capital, what's coming in, what's going out, so the amounts at the top, and if you're doing any inter-account transfers. Now, sometimes there is the functioning for you to upload a letter, a PDF letter, onto your journal isn't always there. So you send a journal message with this on it, and it says, please enable document upload, and then you can upload the PDF letter from the toolkit, or if you're going to write your own, then do that. Now, I would advise you to upload it, and I would also advise you to copy and paste that letter and then just put it in your journal. And the reason for that is this. In universal credit land, on a universal credit claim in particular, different people access and manage different parts of your claim. So, work coaches, I know they like to lead everyone to believe that they manage absolutely everything and that they are God in the world of universal credit land, but they're not. They just think that because they are facing the customer and they think they have the most amount of control. They do not. It is the case managers and it is the decision makers. And decision makers are never in the job centre. They're always in a completely different building, quite often another part of the country. Nobody really ever knows who they are. And it is the same with case managers. Case managers deal with everything that is predominantly financial on a universal credit claim. So let's just say your claim has been closed or suspended, and you have written a letter and you've made a request for reasonable adjustments, and that has been ignored or it hasn't been processed, and they close your claim, and you would then be able to make a formal complaint. A case manager would be allocated that, and a case manager would have to go through, first of all, they would go through everything in your journal messages, they'd look at other parts of the claim as well, and they would make a decision. That's why it's important to do this in both putting it in your journal and also a PDF letter, because another type of administrator would be looking and dealing with the letters that come in as well and logging that somewhere else on your claim. So like that, you've kind of got like a double whammy. You've got, two different decision maker type of people on your claim that can access that information. Now, I want to talk very briefly about universal credit claim reviews. Normally, universal credit claim reviews are only done if there is a change of circumstances that the claimant has made, that would be yourself, or if there has been a change of your work group. So you've gone from one work group to another, and that would predominantly be because of a change of circumstances, or perhaps a change in your income. So you were earning, maybe you were working full time and you were earning like £2,500 a month, and you were getting a bit of a top up from Universal Credit, and then it dropped down to like 1,200, and then you've gone underneath the average earnings threshold, so that would automatically trigger something in the system and potentially put you into another work group. Now, what I'm not liking from everything I'm seeing and hearing is what's going on with these universal credit claim reviews. I honestly do not think that it is that everyone is making these changes of circumstances. I know lots of you have told me that you're not, and because I know how incapable the actual system is in itself and lots of the people that are working there, I have very serious concerns about this amount of financial data just being uploaded willy-nilly, and we do not know where that data is being stored. We do know that there have been lots of third-party software companies that manage the systems for DWP and other agencies that have been hacked. We also know that there have been lots of breaches of data before, and I just think it is genuinely very concerning. And with the whole switch that we have right now with AI, which is very, very new as a concept, Nobody really knows that much about it. The AI world has sped up the process of computer programming, software, security, and all the rest of it. I honestly think for the Department of Work and Pensions to demand the general public or the claimants to upload all of their bank statements like this, I think is really such a risk when it comes to data security and GDPR. But that is what they have chosen to do. I am viciously still waiting and watching for the ICO updates, but then maybe maybe they're not going to update anything about the Department of Work and Pensions at this point. But when they do, I will be the first to know, and I will be letting you know all about it. Let me know in the comments if this has been helpful. I'm going to leave all the necessary links down below so you can go and find out all this other stuff, and I hope it helps you all. Thanks very much.